Another day of Brexit drama now. Oh, hold on to those notes.
Windy day as well. I don't think I need those ones. Thanks very much, Dan. You'll know, last month, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he would rather be, and I quote, dead in a ditch than ask the EU for an extension to his Brexit deadline of October 31st. On Saturday night, though, that's what he had to do. And one of the architects of that climb down was the Labour MP, Benn, who joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Proud of what you've been able to achieve with this Benn amendment?
Well, the purpose of the Act was to safeguard the country from crashing out on the 31st of October without a deal. And a majority of MPs from all parties think that that would absolutely not be in the national interest because of the damage that it would do. And therefore, that's why we tried to pass the bill. It became an Act. And as you've just said, Boris Johnson did have to send a letter. He said he never would because that's the law.
And then there was the Letwin amendment as well. Did you vote for that?
I did indeed,
and
yes.
Why?
Because I think we need to keep open the safeguard that the Act provides, depending on what happens between now and the 31st of October. Because if the deal had gone through on Saturday without that amendment that Oliver Letwin put down, and then the subsequent legislation wasn't to pass, we could then have ended up falling over a cliff, leaving without a deal at the end of the 31st of October. So what the amendment did was to say the deal is not approved until the legislation has passed, and that protects the effect of the Act, which is trying to make sure that we don't leave without a deal, whatever else happens.
I suppose this is a bit of an open goal for you in many ways. As a Labour MP, you just don't trust Boris Johnson, do you?
Well, I think with some reason. He said he'd never send a letter, and he has done so. But really, this is about Parliament saying, and we had very different views, those of us who supported the legislation, completely different views about how this might end. But what brought us together was we realised that leaving without an agreement is really bad for the country because of what it would do to our economy and our future prospects.
What happens next? Even if John Bercow, the Speaker, doesn't allow a meaningful vote today, what happens next in terms of Labour MPs in particular trying to add more amendments, more delay to this deal getting through or being scrutinised by October the 31st?
Well, I don't think that scrutinising the agreement that the Prime Minister's brought back is delay. It's parliamentarians doing their job. I mean, it was only produced last week. We have yet to see the bill. So normally you get legislation, you have a chance to read it, to consider it, put down amendments. But I think you will see, as Jessica Parker was saying a moment ago, I think you're likely to see an amendment seeking to put this whole deal back to the British people, because that's actually the way to get Brexit done. You're likely to see an amendment saying we should remain in a customs union. That would help to solve part of the problem on the border between GB and Northern Ireland, where there will now be a customs border. Another thing that Boris Johnson said he would never ever agree to, and he has.
So the feeling I'm getting is that you wouldn't vote for this deal as it stands, this agreement.
I would not vote for this deal unless, and this is the compromise, unless it goes back to the people for them to decide, is this what you want? Is this what you had in mind? And that can get Brexit done, because we've now had 4 times in which the House of Commons has been unable to pass a deal, and I completely understand those who say we'd like to get this first phase over. I think the best way of doing that now is to let the people decide, because the people began the process back in June 2016.
Now you're sitting here, member of the Labour Party, talking to me. Keir Starmer, your colleague, has commented on how the front bench isn't pushing forward for another amendment for a second referendum, and that Jeremy Corbyn, and the implication being is that Jeremy Corbyn isn't taking ownership of this. Surely the leadership needs to come from the front.
I don't agree with that. Keir also made the point that the amendments, the motions that have been most successful in the House of Commons have been those that are backbench and have cross-party support, because it shows it's not just about what one party is proposing or another. It says here's a range of MPs who are coming together in the national interest to propose what we think is best for the country, and I think it's perfectly sensible, and that's what Keir said, to carry on with that approach as we consider the bill, which we presume will come for its second reading tomorrow.
I'll tell you why I ask this, is because there is a lot of doubt that Jeremy Corbyn has shown effective leadership of the Labour Party and been an effective leader of the opposition. Do you genuinely believe that if there is a general election over the next few months, it's very unclear as to when that will be, that he will be able to win that, having failed to block so far from the front Theresa May and Boris Johnson?
Well, look, let's take the leadership that Jeremy has shown over the last few months. We are now the only party promising, the only major party promising to take the question of the final deal back to the British people in a referendum.
Even though he's not claimed whether or not he'll be Remain or leave.
Well, that's what the conference decided. Now, I think the vast majority of Labour MPs and Labour Party members will be campaigning for Remain in that referendum, but that is leadership. And secondly, of course, I hope we're going to win the general election. We're going to be working really, really hard to make sure that we are successful. It is in the hands of the voters to decide what the outcome is. But faced with the choice between, on the one hand, Boris Johnson, who says, if necessary, I will go for a no-deal Brexit. On the other hand, the Liberal Democrats, whose policy now is to cancel the referendum result, say it never happened, forget all about it. The compromise in the middle is what Labour is offering, which is a referendum in which people can choose between the deal that has been negotiated, excuse me, and I don't agree with it for all the reasons that Keir Starmer and others set out, but we are prepared to say, put that to the people alongside Remain, and then the people will decide. I don't know what the decision will be, but it will get this phase of the Brexit process over. Either we will leave on that deal, or if the British people have changed their mind, we would remain. Now,
you've made clear you won't be voting for the deal, but John Lansom has tweeted warning that Labour rebels will face deselection at the next election if they vote for this deal, and some have indicated they're willing to do that. Is that fair?
I'm not in favour myself of this approach, because in the end each member of Parliament has a responsibility to do what he or she thinks is right, and you weigh up the views of your constituents, how your constituency voted in the referendum, what you think of the deal, what you think is in the national interest. And I think we should respect one another. I hope, having said that, I hope that all Labour MPs will vote to oppose this deal, because it's very bad for the country. It's even worse than Theresa May's deal, and it would result in the hardest of hard Brexits, and that is not in the interests of businesses, the jobs of people who work in those businesses, and the future of our economy.
Hilary Benn, thank you very much for talking to me this morning. You may not have seen it from Hilary, the way he was sitting there, but I'm obviously very, very, very wrapped up. It is cold. Look at this autumn picture. It certainly is autumn. Look at that. The leaves on the ground. Damp ground this morning in front of the Houses of Parliament, in front of the Palace of Westminster. Now, Carol, we are definitely into autumn, are we not?
We most certainly are.